All right, good afternoon, Marlins fans. Welcome into another episode of the Miami Marlins Prospects Pod. My name is David Fernandez. I'm here, as always, with Joe Frisaro from manon2nd.com. We're on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel, and we're going to talk you through everything that we learned sort of moving into the trade deadline, what was going on while the trade deadline was sort of coming to pass, the move that the Marlins made, and sort of the ripple effects that move has for the system itself. It was a day that many Marlins fans were hoping would have been a little bit busier than what it ended up being, but obviously it's something that Marlins fans can point to as adding a potential player who we might see at the end of this season. It's not maybe at some point next season. We'll see. But Joe, how you doing? How was trade deadline day for you?
I'm doing great, David. And yeah, we have a lot to dive into. And I'm in that camp that would have liked to seen more. When this was an opportunity, I thought, and for them to make significant moves to kind of get the system, stocked up even more and push this thing forward. But as we've learned, trades are difficult. Finding the matchups are difficult. So Pablo Lopez stays. 2 relievers, going into the day, David, I anticipated that at least one, if not 2 relievers would go. I figured one of either Anthony Bass, Tanner Scott, Stephen Okert, or who am I missing? Dylan Floro could have been moved.
Yeah.
Instead, what ultimately happened was Anthony Bass and Zach Pop. Interesting story because Zach Pop took himself from Rule 5 pick and made himself have value. He's attached to a deal. He goes to Toronto. Congrats to Bass and Pop. They go to a playoff contender. The Marlins get infielder Jordan Groshans, and he immediately jumps up to number 4 on the MLB Pipeline's top 30 Marlins list. He was a top 100 prospect, infielder, shortstop, third baseman. My people tell me he's a third baseman. But, he's 22 years old, first rounder back in 2018, taking, I guess, the pick or so before Connor Scott was picked by the Marlins in that year's draft. So, again, we'll see what Groshans does. We'll jump into why Pablo Lopez is here and what the possible trade could have looked like had he not been. But first, reaction to the Groshans deal, and how excited are you now?
Yeah, so let's get into that deal. So this is what it looked like. The Marlins sent 2, ultimately replaceable relief pitchers, guys that were having some success out of the Marlins bullpen in Zach Pop and Anthony Bass. Zach Pop, of course, as you mentioned, was a Rule 5 pick. And the Marlins had signed Anthony Bass to a free agent deal ahead of last season. The anticipation for Bass, at least when he was signed, was that he was going to be a closer, but he ended up never registering a save while with the Marlins. He goes back to the Blue Jays. He pitched for them in the 2020 season. And then the Marlins picked up, as you mentioned, Jordan Groshans, who, he comes into the system at the higher levels. And we'll talk about why it's important that the Marlins added some high-level bats to that system, because so many of the prospects that we've spent most of the year talking about, from position player perspective, they're either outfielders or they're in the lower minors. So to add somebody on the infield who is going to go into the upper minors is obviously something that's going to help the Marlins system, their depth and things like that. Groshans himself, just a quick look at, what we know about him. As you mentioned, he was the 12th pick. There's a typo there, not the 2019 draft. He was the 12th pick in the 2018 draft. Sorry about the typo. He was Toronto's number 4 prospect, number 82 overall, according to MLB Pipeline. 22 years old. The Marlins assigned him to AAA Jacksonville. When people look at this deal and they look at Groshans' numbers at the AAA level, relatively underwhelming, especially his most recent run at AAA Buffalo, only hitting .250 with a .644 OPS, 8 doubles, 1 homer over 67 games. Last year with Double-A had better numbers, 291 batting average, 817 OPS, 23 doubles, 7 homers. He's a guy that, shows plate discipline and strike zone awareness, which is obviously something that the Marlins have put some value on, especially when you look at what they did in this most recent draft. Only 16.4% K rate, which is awesome, 19.3% the year before. And he has that defensive versatility that we know the Marlins value. So, with a guy like Groshans, we're looking at somebody who, is referred to as a good bat, a gap-to-gap hitter. Actually, let me play you what Kim Ng said about Groshans during the Bally's broadcast. Of course,
You're getting so much better at this, David. I love our little production you get with the videos going. We're growing this thing the right way.
Yes, sir. So that was Marlins GM Kim Ng, who, again, most Marlins fans would have hoped she was a bit more busy yesterday, but ultimately they get a guy that comes into the system with some expectations now. Maybe a change of scenery will help sort of jumpstart what's going on for him from a production perspective. What do you make of the addition of Jordan Groshans, Joe?
Yeah, I got some scout friends I reached out to have scouted him this year. He's basically projected as a utility player, which is fine because, when you get down to it, Bass and Pop were kind of 6th, 7th inning profiles. So they're, a utility for not a closer or not a starter is pretty much equal value. I guess he's dealt with some injuries. I didn't get specifically. Yeah, he had been a little banged up.
2019 and 2021, he missed time with injuries, and then obviously the 2020 year, the COVID shutdown. So he's had limited playing time over the course of his 4-year career. Yeah. Only 146 games in 4 years due to injury and COVID.
Yeah, but again, a utility player can work their way into a big league regular. I mean, we've seen that. Miguel Rojas was a utility player who worked himself into it. John Birdie is that utility player. Groshans isn't the speed type of tool threat of a John Birdie, but he's a first round talent, and so he's still pretty young at 22, being a first round talent. I'm sure they're banking on upside. The power concerns you because if he hasn't shown power in the minor leagues, we know Lone Depot Park isn't exactly going to bring it out in him. Right. But, if you have an expectation that if he's a top of the order or bottom of the order type of guy who'll give you a quality at bat and, keep the line moving type of player, then it could be an interesting signing. It's interesting, that they gave two relievers in that one. Just to pivot off of Jordan for a second, I thought that the Marlins could have possibly done this with another reliever or two, whether it was Floro or, like I said, Okert, and maybe attach, somebody else and try to make these type of deals where you get, a little bit more of a higher end type of prospect. Obviously, this is the one they pulled off. But statistically, let's see, most of his at bats this year were, at AAA. The 341, on base percentage, even with the 247 combined batting average, isn't that bad. The fact that, like I said, he'll draw some walks. Yeah. Looks like he doesn't run much. He just has like 3 career stolen bases. But again, like you say, what in 2022 was 51 Ks and 36 walks. So again, that's he's going to put the bat in the ball, or he's going to give you a quality at bat. And I'm interested to see how he does, and you probably are too, because I guess you're going to be able to go out and see him. He did. He is at AAA now, so we'll see if he's a September type of call up. I will tell you this: I asked Donnie yesterday, do they feel any need to get looks on younger players? And Donnie was more like, when Birdie gets back, he's going to play. When Brian Anderson gets back, and there was concerns he might have missed the whole year, they think sometime this month, probably toward the end of it, Andy should be back. These guys are going to play, but you never know. If these guys have setbacks, we saw how Charles LeBlanc got into the lineup. So I'm fascinated to see how he does because, maybe he's one of those under the radar guys that gives you a good solid acquisition. And then you look to make more deals in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea here is that the Marlins were kind of buying low on Groshans, who people were very, very high on going through the draft process. The Marlins were actually in on Groshans during that 2018 draft. He was picked, as you mentioned, one pick ahead of the Marlins that year. The Marlins took Connor Scott, who was ultimately used in the Jacob Stallings deal. But this is an opportunity to buy low, sending off guys that, again, Zach Pop maybe, but Anthony Bass wasn't going to figure into the long-term future for this franchise.
Correct.
Pop was a good pitcher. They had lots of control, but again, a Rule 5 pickup. These guys were ultimately replaceable pieces in the bullpen, and we've talked quite a bit about the bullpen arms. We'll get to talking about the next bullpen arm that we're going to expect the Marlins to call up here, hopefully in the not too distant future. But with adding a guy like Groshans, you're buying low on a prospect that people were really, really excited about just a couple of years ago. And I want to remind everybody, when the Marlins traded for Jazz Chisholm in 2019, his numbers at AA for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they weren't great either. Jazz Chisholm, when at the time of the trade in 2019, was hitting 204 at the AA level with a 732 OPS. So, and obviously we've seen what Jazz has done since then. Does Groshans have the kind of sort of pop and speed that Jazz has? No, probably not. But to say that, he's a finished product at 22 years old because he struggled for half a year at AAA, that's pushing it too far, I think. 22 years old is young for the AAA level. He is facing guys who are older and sometimes much older than him, at the AAA level. And even Kim Ng mentioned it in her discussions after the trade. She says that he was a little bit young, or that he is a little bit young for the AAA level, but they've put him there anyway because that's where they're going to get maybe the best look at him from a prospect's perspective. And we know obviously they work closely with the Jacksonville coaching staff because there's basically a revolving door at this point between Miami and Jacksonville from an organizational perspective. So it's exciting for Marlins fans to see a new name added to the system and somebody who could definitely contribute in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and David, when I'm scrolling that, if people see me looking down, I'm looking up stats on these players. And Groshans, just keep this in mind too. We've talked a lot in the show about at bats, plate appearances, and so forth. The kid has 806 total minor league game at bats. That doesn't count obviously 2020 if he was in the alternate site or whatever. And over 300 of those are over 600 of those 806. That's at bats. Over 300, 600 were in the last 2 years, 21 and 22. So, a lot of those players that were in that kind of 18, 19 draft class, we talked about it with JJ Bleday in the class of 19, how 2020 and 21 really hurt those players that were just getting their feet wet, had minor league ball taken away from them because of COVID. And then, the shortened season in 21 and, the spring training, not the same, that type of stuff that made these last 2 years. So these guys now that you might be normally saying by 22, 23, 24, they may be losing, prospect kind of, profiles, might need another year because of missed time. But again, we want to see what Jordan does. Again, I'm hearing more third base than shortstop, but maybe play shortstop in a pinch. Obviously, you're going to have to hit for a little bit higher power to be in third base. Maybe he goes to second base, but that's where it looks like right now. If we want to pivot a bit to the trade that wasn't made, this is probably the one that's most frustrating because I was anticipating and certainly hoping for more from the Marlins yesterday to be more proactive. Again, we don't know all the dealings and so forth, but we do know there was a lot of attention to Pablo Lopez. We do know the New York Yankees had interest, the Los Angeles Dodgers and so forth had interest. A report came out like late Monday night about the Dodgers. And, I'd been noting them. I noted in a podcast I had with Eric on our Man on Second podcast about the Dodgers, making sense and wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there. The Yankees have been scouting Pablo for a while, along with the Blue Jays, which is funny because the Blue Jays and the Yankees have been on the Marlins pretty much the same. And the Blue Jays get a couple of relievers from the Marlins. Yankees do business. They talk Pablo. I know the Miami Herald and their fine reporting they do. They noted a possible Gleyber Torres type of deal. But I can tell you what I hear from my people, and it doesn't mean anything was more definitive than others because there are a lot of conversations. But I heard that the Marlins were looking for Oswald Peraza for Pablo. So whatever scenario they had, I heard that would have been the Yankees, number 2 or so prospect. Not Anthony Volpe was the ask by the Marlins. Peraza, who I think a lot of people feel, or many people feel, could be more of a true shortstop than Volpe. Some people question whether Volpe is going to stick at short. There are people I talk to in the industry who are very good scouts who see both of them being big league shortstops, Peraza and Volpe. But Peraza would have been a real interesting one. But from what I heard, the Yankees weren't ready to pull the trigger on a deal with and this isn't inside Marlins people, this is outside Marlins people telling me that about Peraza's connection to being in a Marlins trade. And I guess, I know that there was a lot of activity. Kim Ng even acknowledged and even said in her private conversation with Pablo, she noted to him how popular he is. And you could see why. He's still got 2 years of control after this year. But it would have been interesting if the Yankees would have been that, because as we know, the Marlins, it's no secret, are in the market for center fielder, but Miggy Rowe's days as an everyday shortstop are kind of winding down. There's some talk of Joey Wendell being the shortstop for next year, but I'm not sold that he's would hold up or fit most favorably as an everyday shortstop. But, clearly the fact of interest in Peraza shows the Marlins are looking via trade or however they can to address shortstop long-term.
Yeah, and it would have been fascinating had they dealt Pablo. We talked about it in our last episode. We know that his name was sort of tossed around out there, and a number of teams were interested because we saw quite a bit of movement in the sort of starting pitcher market, going through the deadline, and the Yankees they need pitching thanks to injuries. They actually dealt away one of their starters, Jordan Montgomery. So I thought at that point, I saw somewhere that maybe, they made that trade assuming or planning on having Pablo Lopez, but then obviously the deal with the Marlins didn't come together. I would love to have somebody, looking at just these stats here for Peraza, I would love to have somebody who could do this on an everyday level at shortstop. I mean, even though Groshans comes in as a shortstop as well, he can transition over to third base, and Peraza could have been maybe the shortstop of the future, and having it up the middle with Peraza and Jazz. That's not to say that the Marlins can't maybe loop around in the offseason and sort of reconnect with the Yankees on a deal like this. Lopez, as you mentioned, still under team control, but they haven't made an extension offer to him yet. If they do want to keep Lopez long-term, they probably should start those extension talks at some point soon, right? But if they ultimately view him as somebody who's going to help sort of build out the system, if he has a solid close to this season, maybe they turn around and during the winter they reconnect with the Yankees on a deal sort of headlined by Peraza. Because you're right, with somebody like Gleyber Torres, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for the Marlins to have him as the headliner coming back in a package for Lopez, especially since the Marlins, for all intents and purposes at this point, they're basically out of the race. Torres would have been more of a win now move, I think, to add somebody to the major league roster versus Peraza, who, if they made that deal, would probably be with the Marlins in the big club sooner rather than later. But still, it's funny how some of that stuff works out, and everybody kind of anticipated that Pablo move, but it ultimately sort of didn't pan out. Who knows if they do it again in the future? But the big move from yesterday, let's talk about this because, as we got to the end of trade deadline day, it looked like the San Diego Padres were trading for everyone in the entire world. And, we needed to look at our phones to make sure that we weren't involved in a package heading to San Diego. But the deal that they completed, obviously the headliner for Juan Soto, they sent guys that we've talked about a little bit through,
Yes.
in our run this season: CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, Robert Hassel, James Wood, sorry, not James Woods, the actor, and then Harlan Susana and Luke Voigt. They went to the Nationals, and then obviously the Nationals landed, the big fish, or the Padres, I'm sorry, landed the big fish on the market in Juan Soto.
Josh Bell also included in that trade.
Right.
Yeah.
You wanted to touch on some of these guys, Joe. What did you make of this deal?
Yeah. And the reason we're doing this, and as I say, we're going to grow this podcast out, and we're a prospects podcast. I know we say Marlins podcast, but we're going to be definitive, and we're pretty darn good at what we're doing. And I have a lot of familiarity with names on this list. And, the haul itself, once you get past, if you're a baseball person, once you get past just oh my gosh, you traded Juan Soto, future Hall of Famer. This is Miguel Cabrera trade all over again.
Right.
And yes, prospects don't always pan out as reflected by the Miguel Cabrera trade, but the Washington Nationals got a haul. This is a very, very strong haul they got from the San Diego Padres. And I had kind of felt like when I think John Morosi first came out with Abrams and Gore attached to a possible Soto trade, I'm like, that's the perfect match. In my eyes, I thought, I even noted them as a team, and I did some inquiring around, and the Man on Second podcast from the other day before the trade deadline, I noted the Padres as kind of my front runner, but also noted the Dodgers and St. Louis Cardinals as like the three finalists that we thought, or I thought. But let's start with CJ Abrams. We all know he was taken right behind, 2 picks behind JJ Bleday back in the 19 draft, excuse me. He's already been in the big leagues at age 21. He can play shortstop or center field. He will now get to play every day and not have to worry about is Tatis on the team. The Padres, are ready to win now. This kid has like future batting champ type of talent. Really a pure hitter. He's not going to hit a ton of homers, maybe 10-ish, but he's going to be a super top of the order, speed threat, great swing, great approach, going to get on base. Mackenzie Gore at one point was a top 5 prospect. He's dealing with some arm issues. He's had some issues with command and so forth, but that's a legit rotation piece. At one point considered top of a rotation, even if he figures in the back end, whether a 4 or 5, maybe he touches on that, has a year or so pitching at a number 2 type of level. So that's great for them. Those were the guys in the big leagues. Robert Hassel, he immediately springboards to 1 on the pipeline list for the Nationals. Outfielder, left-handed hitter, 6'2", age 20. This kid's got a lot of upside, really good hitter. But a guy that, to me, that could really, really, really make this trade really interesting. Let me add another really for you, David. And another really, it's James Wood, who right here from the state of Florida, playing at IMG with, and this I find fascinating as someone who last year saw IMG play Calvary Christian when they had Andrew Painter at Calvary. And you got Elijah Green, the number 5 pick in the draft. And this year's draft is with the Washington Nationals. He's reconnecting with his high school teammate, James Wood. Big James Wood, left-handed, 19 years old, 6'7". So, he'll probably win a lot of the pickup game basketball games that when they have in spring training and so forth.
Oh, yeah. David,
this kid's power is Stanton-esque. Whether he's going to put it together, but it's in there, and this could be a really, really special player.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question with all these types of deals, right? You worry a little bit. I mean, the Nationals were kind of forced into this position when Soto kind of asked out, so it's a little bit different than the situation with the Marlins with Cabrera. But if you think back to that deal with Cabrera, both Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller were high-end prospects at that time. So, they didn't pan out for the Marlins, obviously.
But they both had really good careers. Miller probably more than Maybin, but
Absolutely.
they were first-round talents. That's the thing. And so again, you knew Soto wasn't going to sign, and apparently the Nats could be up for sale. And what good is it keeping him when you trade high on a player? That's, to me, if I have a frustration of the Marlins at the deadline not moving Pablo, was that window there. Now, could you have been more aggressive and try to get to Seattle for a deal like they did for Luis Castillo, or find one of these teams and try to get somebody? And I guess they did, because Peraza, by all indications, even if it was a 1-for-1, could have been a very interesting trade for the Marlins to grab a talent that's going to be, a big league, a better than average big league shortstop, for a number 2, number 3 pitcher is a pretty good return.
Yeah. So, we're talking about the deals that were completed, right? And, some of the deals that weren't necessarily completed. And we've talked quite a bit about Pablo Lopez, and we had expected some of the other bullpen pieces to move. Maybe you mentioned Okert, and we'll get to Okert here in a minute. But when, Avi Garcia was sort of up in the air at one point, but then Avi Garcia got pulled yesterday because of an injury. So we're going to loop back around to what does this trade ultimately mean, and what's going on now with the Marlins for their prospects, right? And so if Garcia ends up landing on the injured list, right? He wasn't traded, so he's still with the club. If he ends up landing on the injured list, obviously we've talked quite a bit about Gerard Encarnacion, and he's somebody that, sort of easily makes the move into the lineup because he's already in the 40-man roster. But another guy that probably deserves a look at this point is Peyton Burdick. We talked about Peyton Burdick off and on throughout the year. He's been playing very, very well at AAA Jacksonville. He was sort of paired in Jacksonville with J.J. Bleday in that outfield. We've obviously seen J.J. Bleday make his move to the major league level, and Burdick really sort of seems like the next one in line, right? So he has had a pretty good year overall in Jacksonville. He's hitting .230 with a 774 OPS, 14 homers, 15 doubles, 3 triples, 50 RBI. He actually hit a grand slam yesterday that helped them win their game and keep them in first place. The Jumbo Shrimp are actually tied for first place at this point of the season in the International East Division. So that win was an important one for them. But really, what's happening here with Burdick, he lost some of the protection in the lineup with Bleday going and with Lewin Diaz going. But in the month of July, he really picked up his production with those guys going. He went 21 for 82, 256, 799 OPS, 3 doubles, a triple, 5 home runs, and 15 RBIs, and 15 runs scored. What's exciting about Burdick right now, he is lowering that K rate. He's got it down to 25.7 at the AAA level after being close to 30% last year. He's also going to the opposite field more this year. He's going to right field 32.3% of the time. And he's really, really good at taking that extra base. With those extra base opportunities, he's made it 31 out of 42 tries. That's a 73.8% rate. And just for sort of the context, the MLB average in taking the extra base is about 42%. So, he's somebody that's really sort of coming into his own at the AAA level. What do you have on Peyton Burdick, Joe?
Yeah, you summed him up very well. And yeah, he's a guy, whether they want to do it sooner than later, I don't know, because, Gerard's already on the 40-man. We had spoke a couple of weeks ago about, when JJ got called up, one of the factors, may not have been the entire factor, was Gerard was working on some things. So it seemed like he would be next in line. We might find out sooner than later on that. But Burdick, obviously, all bets are off now. Opportunity is going to be there for these guys who are the prospects knocking on the door. Peyton's he's 25 years old. He's got 983 at bats, so I don't see his plate appearances here. But he has over 1,000 plate appearances at the minor league level. This is what I think he could play. I think in the Marlins' eyes, JJ and Burdick can handle center field.
Yeah.
And if they need to, until they find a center fielder. And I like this stat on him, David. 4 triples this year. And, he has 10 career triples. I mean, so, the fact that for a big guy, big muscular guy, he runs really well.
Yeah.
So he gets his share of doubles, but he can leg out a 3-base hit, which that tells me, he's not just, just a big lumbering, type of player. He's got some speed in there. From all indications, he's a baseball player. He's a grinder. He's tough. He's kind of very gritty. And, we've seen him in spring training for a while now. And again, he might become the new Lewin for us, because I tell you this much, I don't think you're going to see Lewin back in Jacksonville anytime soon.
I don't think so.
It doesn't sound like Aguilar may have a long-term future here. And so, Lewin will get looks, and the Marlins want to find out if Lewin can hit. So now Peyton's going to kind of become that guy who, with JJ already up here and LeBlanc already up here, he's going to be the next in line, assuming Gerard gets his opportunity as well, as we're waiting to see if Peyton Burdick can be up here. And he should be an exciting guy, because I always kind of saw him as like a Adam Duvall type of player. Who may not hit for the highest average, but when he hits them, there's no doubt.
That's true. Yeah.
He could handle center field. Again, I think he's an potentially impactful guy. You just don't want your lineup filled with 230, 30% K rate guys. And that kind of got them where they are right now. So I'm excited to see when Peyton gets his call. And I imagine he'll be at some point, in the final 2 months.
Yeah, and with Burdick, he's a guy that to me, anyways, and I obviously am not a scout by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, he feels like at the major league level a really solid 4th outfielder, somebody who may become a regular, but if given the opportunity, but definitely somebody who can contribute as a 4th outfielder. And when you look at what the Marlins have right now, Brian De La Cruz has struggled throughout the season. I mean, his batting average, I think it's down to like 214 or something like that. So, Burdick might be somebody who grabs De La Cruz's role and who can play, because he's a center fielder, but he's also been in left field and right field. He could play anywhere on that outfield. He's got some speed. He's got some pop.
8 stolen bases. He's got 24 career stolen bases.
Yeah, he's
getting 7 or 8, 9 a year, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, definitely deserves a look at this point. And with some of these other guys, including the guy that we're going to get to next, he's going to be Rule 5 eligible come December. So the Marlins need to make a decision on what they're going to do with him. Now, one of the names that I want to bring up right now, we've talked about him, in the past already. Somebody in the bullpen, and this guy, Andrew Nardi, he's somebody that when you look at the Marlins not trading Stephen Okert, for example, I feel like he would have been the perfect replacement for Okert in the Marlins bullpen right now. But obviously Okert was not dealt at the deadline, but Nardi still has been incredibly impressive this year between Pensacola and Jacksonville. He's 3-0 with Jacksonville, 2.43 ERA. He has 6 saves in 8 opportunities, 44 strikeouts in 29.2 innings pitched. He's got an 0.78 whip and a 103 batting average against. He has a K rate of 38.9% and a walk rate of 12.5. With Pensacola earlier this year, he had posted a 1.40 ERA, giving up only 3 earned runs in 19.1 innings pitched and 31 strikeouts. Over the month of July, he made 8 appearances for the Jumbo Shrimp in July. He went a perfect 4 for 4 in save opportunities. He pitched to a 1.69 ERA over 10 2/3 innings pitched with 16 strikeouts and just 4 walks. He's somebody that at this point, he deserves a look. 23 years old, left-hander, big guy, 6'3", a little deceptiveness to his delivery. Decent sort of mid-90s fastball, tops out at 96. He's got a slider that's devastating for lefties and a changeup that kind of messes with righties. So he's a guy that I think can really sort of contribute to the Marlins bullpen right now, like tomorrow or tonight when they face the Reds. So, but obviously he's still in Jacksonville at this point. What do you have on Andrew Nardi, Joe?
Yeah, he's the guy I believe is next in line. Yeah, I really do. I think that, like you say, if they had moved either Scott or Blyer, could have really, or Okert, obviously those are the three lefties in the Marlins pen.
Yeah.
He could have gotten that call really fast. 92 to 96 miles an hour. You talked about the slider, which is swing and miss. And kid, I'm interested in seeing because, people I respect are pushing him and thinking that it's his time really soon, and kind of liked him over a few guys that are on the roster right now. And again, this is a kid, who we'll keep an eye on. We were all over Brazabon, right? We were getting him there, and he's looked good. And let's get these guys up here and get a look. And
no, I think we're on a solid run because we mentioned Brazabon. Obviously, we talked about LeBlanc, and then he got the call. We're on
a run here. So we got
so Nardi's next.
Nardi is next. It's Nardi time.
Here in Jacksonville, the TV crew, Scott Kornberg and Matt Davis, they do a great job. I think it was either Scott, but I think it was Matt Davis who coined #NardiParty when Nardi gets into the games. So yeah, he's somebody that Marlins fans are going to be impressed with when he gets here. But I guess to close out here for today, with just one more guy we want to talk about, and he's somebody that is now just getting to Jacksonville. Talking about Victor Mesa, the much ballyhooed signing back in 2018, back in October 2018. The Marlins signed him for over $5 million. He's 26 years old at this point, from Cuba, and he earned his promotion after having a really, really solid stretch in the month of July at AA Pensacola. And this is significant because he has really struggled up until this point. In July with the Pensacola Blue Wahoos, he slashed .315 with a .353 on base and a .425 slugging percentage, 3 doubles, a triple, a homer, 14 RBI, 11 runs scored, 12 stolen bases in 13 attempts, 5 sac flies in those 20 games. He's been really, really good defensively in center field. He's also played a little bit in left and right. He's been somebody that the Marlin fan has heard about for several years, he and his younger brother, Victor Mesa Jr. But he's finally made it to AAA at 26 years old. So he will be sort of slotting into the outfield, probably, I guess, where JJ Bleday vacated, right? He could play center. Do they have Burdick in center or Mesa in center? They get to decide that. What do you have on Victor?
Yeah, this is what I would do with them. I would basically every other day have Burdick in center and Mesa in center, and give them both that. The other one goes to the corner, but get them both in center field. And I think the profile with Victor is, because the power's not there, the hit tool has been lagging, that you're going to have to try to get a more of a defensive specialist. Hope he puts the bat in the ball. Be that 4th/5th outfielder, defensive replacement, pinch runner, and try to get to the big leagues in that capacity. As long as his K rates are low, where he could put the bat in the ball, he's not going to do impact. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's a September call up just to see how it looks, see how he looks in center field. Obviously right now, they have, Billy Hamilton, who's kind of take that role. He's not the 80 speed guy that Billy Hamilton is, but you might want to just see what he can do if he just completely doesn't look lost at the plate and just kind of attempt. So my point is Burdick over him any day, every day, but see if when you're looking to find a better defensive option in center field, maybe he's a little bit like Sierra from the right side without the complete blazing speed. Yeah. But see if you can find a big league role for him. And obviously you're going to say that's not really the profile I want to hear on a $5.25 million player. But keep in mind his brother signed for $1 million, and his brother has a lot of upside.
Yeah.
If one of those two becomes an average big leaguer, that's a 6.25 investment for a big leaguer, and that's a bargain. That's how it is. And I like the kid. He's another kid who got hurt by COVID and not playing. And on top of that, we know his last year or so, as he was getting out of Cuba, he didn't have a lot of game action as well. But it's good to see him at least hitting 300 at some level, if it's over extended play. But that's obviously going to track way down without power. They'll just pitch him differently and play him differently, and not have to play very deep, for him. So again, I pull for the Mesa brothers. I always liked Victor Jr. As a really solid. I think that kid's got a chance to be an everyday player. And the brother, he's dealing with a lot of expectation. Obviously we know his father, what it means to be Cuban and play in Miami. And I'm pulling for him. I don't quit on talent, and I haven't, but I think you have to identify who he is and put expectation of what we think he can be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he's deployed. I mean, he's probably going to get the opportunity to play every day in Jacksonville. He debuted for the Jumbo Shrimp yesterday. He went 2 for 4, so good start there. But he's solid defender, really, a speed guy. So, you might as well give him a look if he can handle himself at AAA. Might as well give him a look maybe in September instead of a guy like Billy Hamilton, who obviously isn't in the long-term future for the club. His brother is Victor Mesa Jr. is actually ranked among the top 30 prospects for the Marlins. He's the number 14 prospect, left-handed hitting outfielder. He's at high A Beloit right now. So, obviously we're going to keep a close eye on him. We're obviously going to continue to keep a close eye on what's going on throughout the Marlins system. But now that the Marlins have kind of fallen out of it, 10 games under 500 at this point. They're not scoring any runs whatsoever. They're losing all their games at home. So we're going to start to branch out and bring you a little bit more information about prospects sort of throughout baseball, guys that have drawn our attention, guys that the Marlins may see down the line, guys that are from the state of Florida, things like that. So we're going to sort of branch out moving forward since, the Marlins have fallen out of it. And of course, we're still going to talk about the Marlins and Marlins prospects and moves and things of that nature. But we're going to do a little bit more at the MLB sort of scope in terms of guys that we see coming, guys that are interesting, stuff like that. Make sure that you take a look at dugoutmugs.com/manon2nd to get your hands on one of these very fancy dugout mugs. And you can enjoy the beverage of your choice there. If you use that link, you're obviously helping us out. Obviously, we're here with you every week. Joe's got the Man on 2ND pod with Eric that runs at least once a week. So what that means is you got to throw on the subscription for the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Like this video. If there's anybody that you want us to talk about going forward, somebody with the Marlins, maybe somebody with the Yankees, who knows? Just throw it into the comments or tag us on social media. I'm at by DL Fernandez. You can get Joe on Twitter at Joe Frisaro or at ManOn2ND. And, we're going to continue to sort of talk prospects, Marlins prospects, baseball prospects as we move forward. As we go through the summer, we're going to start to see some of these guys coming in to the majors later in the season. So it'll be fun to continue talking through everything that's going on with Marlins prospects and prospects in general going forward. But for now, thanks for watching, everybody. It was fun as always.